everyone, to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. I am your host, Ariane Aramburo. Today's guest is Sean Wisner. He lives in Valdez and is a father of two to two teenagers and one of this year's Recover Alaska Sober Heroes. Through his sobriety, Sean shares his story to inspire and uplift others and also leads by example. So please welcome to the Parenting in the Far North podcast, Sean. Hello, good morning, and thanks for joining us today.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Well, let's get right into your story. First, congratulations on being named a Recover Alaska Sober Hero. What did that recognition mean to you personally and also as a father?
Wow. It kind of took me by surprise that I was even nominated for it, because it's sort of just a personal thing that I did to be more present, for my kids and for myself, and really try to promote healthier lifestyles, and as an example to the people that I lead at work and in my private life as well. But it was just an honor, right? And anything that I can do to help kind of spread that community connectedness vibe across Alaska, I'm all about, right? I think we can all try to just model the kind of behavior that we want to see in our kids and in the people that we lead. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I didn't ever try to make a big deal out of it. Didn't really, certainly wasn't something that I planned on being recognized for, because I did it. It was a real personal journey. But it's cool, and the more people I can inspire, the better. That's how I feel.
No, it's a big accomplishment. You should absolutely be proud of it. So you're in Valdez. Are you born and raised Alaskan? Tell me a little bit about your background.
No, I moved here about, almost 30 years ago now. In my 20s, I moved up here like a lot of people did for the adventure, right? I worked as a mountain guide on Denali for a number of years and a heli ski guide down here in Valdez. Guided some whitewater rafting trips and was just having a great time. And then as I got a little bit older and starting a family, I had always volunteered in the emergency response organizations, and then kind of took it into the career side so that I could have more stability for my and less seasonal work for my family, so I could raise my kids and have health insurance and stuff like that. Yeah. But I grew up all over the lower 48. I started out in California and then moved to the East Coast and then down to the southeastern United States, and then went to college in Colorado and North Carolina, and just was always sort of chasing adventure, climbing and skiing and things like that. And so Alaska was a great fit for me when I got a job opportunity. I said yes, and right, here I am.
Yeah, a lot of people, they come here and then they just kind of never leave, or they pull you back. That's kind of what happened in my case.
Yep.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about your sobriety journey. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. I think I got okay. So I went through a divorce in 2014 time period, and experienced some depression and anxiety and things like that. And one thing that it sort of brought out was sort of this lifetime of living in a really high stress work environment, high stress, both through, mountain guiding and mountain rescue. I've been a mountain rescue tech since I was 17 years old, right? An emergency medical technician. And it really triggered a lot of sort of a nervous system overload in my system, in me, that was really hard to process. In the behavioral health world, we call that sort of an amygdala hijack. Well, I was living in it in this sort of fight or flight mode for years, and it was exhausting. And so I did, like many of people in my situation, to try to numb a lot of those feelings, right? We try to numb and some of those big feelings and it's really not sustainable, right? I did that for a number of years until I found myself overweight. Really didn't help any of those anxiety or those nervous system sort of issues that I was having at all. In fact, it made it worse. And I kind of woke up one day, I'm 60, 70 pounds overweight and unhappy and just digging myself a hole. And I said, man, I got to change. I got to do something different. And so I decided right then and there, and that's what started my journey. It took a few years to take hold, but then 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, 4.5 years ago, I left alcohol for good, and never going back. It just was the best thing I ever did for myself and for my kids and for my personal wellness and my health. And now I'm all about helping other people in that journey as well.
No, that's amazing, and congratulations for that. I know watching your video as well as some of the other heroes that were highlighted on Recover Alaska, they talked a little bit about, like you had mentioned, it's not a linear road. There's hills, there's valleys. So for you, what were some of your challenges that you faced early on in recovery? For anyone watching and or listening to this that could help relate, or to kind of be in that, oh, I'm not alone, because I'm sure it just doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't. And unfortunately, our society is centered around, it's centered around drinking, right? You don't even really notice it until you stop, that literally every event you go to is around alcohol, right? I mean, even here in the town I live in, people have there's really not a lot of like social meeting places other than bars. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people have their children's birthday parties at the brewery. I mean, no offense to the brewery, it's a great meeting place and it's a great place, but like, we need more places in the world where we can do things and have fun, and have alcohol not be the central element in that. And there really aren't that many places like that. You travel, and the alcohol is everywhere, and its influence is just everywhere, and you have to almost like separate yourself from it. But it's impossible, right? And why do I have to explain why I don't put poison in my body? Right? It's because our society uh, just makes it so normalized, right? We've normalized that deviance to the point where it is accepted everywhere, and it's weird. You just have to shift your mindset and shift sometimes your friends. There are some people that just didn't really want to hang out if I wasn't drinking, and I had to learn to live with that. But you find new friends and you find new places to hang out, and um, that's one thing that I've really done is on some of the nonprofit boards that I'm a part of is create events that are sober safe, create dance parties that are not centered around alcohol, or
Mm-hmm.
gatherings or things where people can actually connect in our community. And because it's so important that we spend time together as humans, but it doesn't have to be always around alcohol, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. How did you talk to your kids about addiction and sobriety? I know you have two teenagers. How old are they? But how do you kind of facilitate those conversations with them?
They were part of it. They saw it. They saw it happening, and they saw the benefits. And I'm real transparent with my kids. And I said, "Hey, uh, I'm making these changes, and it's so that I can be more present for you guys and more present for myself." And they just were really supportive of all of it. My son is 18. He's about to graduate high school. My daughter's a freshman, 15 years old, and I mean, we just have a really close relationship, and they've been supportive all along. I mean, they were a little bit younger when I started the journey, but they know what's going on, and it's great. It's actually one of the side benefits. It's a lot easier to advocate, especially as teenage parties happen, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier for me to say, hey, you shouldn't drink alcohol. I'm not quite as hypocritical as I would be if I was drunk at home and telling them to not drink alcohol, right? So it certainly helps in that regard.
Yeah. Just in kind of piggybacking off of that, parenting style wise, from when before you took your journey to sobriety to kind of now, I know they're, obviously younger than what they were now, but just kind of comparing the two, is it like night and day? What was that like?
I've always really taken a sort of transparent and trusting approach to parenting. It's part of my leadership journey as well. I really believe that transparency and vulnerability is sort of the key to building trust in any relationship, whether it's parenting or a leadership or interpersonal relationships, romantic relationships, anything. So that didn't change so much. It just gave me a lot more credibility, right? And then they saw my journey and they were able to see me in low points and then getting better. And we call it the big glow up, right? In the past several years. And they're just really proud of me and I'm really proud of them. And, one of the things that we do as a family, and we've kind of always done, it's certainly a lot more in the past 4 or 5 years, is we talk about gratitude every day. It's a practice. And we don't take it for granted. We talk every single day at dinner about things that we're grateful for, things that we're proud of, about ourselves. Right? I'm really trying to build in my kids pride in themselves, so they aren't constantly seeking that validation from other people. And one way that we do that is through talking about gratitude, and I've encouraged them to be, embrace vulnerability and transparency, and that has been profound, right? The way that my relationship with my kids has just blossomed since we started doing that, and just couldn't be more proud of the human beings that they are and that they're becoming. I don't think I had everything to do with that. I think they were already great people, but it certainly helps, right? I think every human can benefit from practicing gratitude.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, talking about vulnerability. I completely agree with that. And I love talking to dads here on the Parenting in the Far North podcast. We talk to the moms, which is great, and we've had experts. But I'm just curious from your perspective, and even too, as a fire chief in such a field where you have to have this armor on, and then you have, you're being vulnerable and sharing your story about your sobriety journey. What would you say to other men, other dads out there who maybe kind of feel like they can't break that wall down? Any advice would you have for them, or how to even kind of take that first step, whether it's with a partner or even with their kids?
I think we call it taking our armor off, right? And there are some times that we have to wear our armor to protect ourselves and our nervous systems from some of the things that we see and do on a regular basis, right? I mean, there's no getting around the fact that we're going to see horrible things in this line of work and be part of things that will really affect your brain and your nervous system. But I feel wholeheartedly that, empathy and transparency and vulnerability are sort of the keys to creating a space both at home and at work where it's okay to not be okay. If we spend our whole lives as men putting those difficult things, locking them away in a file cabinet in the back of our brains, um, it's not sustainable. The file cabinet will fall over and get opened up at the most inopportune time. That's what happened to me, right? Like some sort of triggering event, like a divorce or anything can happen in your life, and years and years of hiding behind my armor made it 1,000 times worse than it would have been had I processed those things as they were happening. And so I think it's my job as a leader and as a man to model the kind of behavior where it's okay to not always be okay. I think the world would be a better place if more men would take off their armor a little more often. I really feel that. I feel like toxic leadership is prevalent in every workplace, especially toxic male leadership, um, especially in the fire service. It's really, because we feel like we have to protect ourselves from these things and we have to be tough or whatever it is. But I think the real strength lies in vulnerability and empathy. That's where I think the world would be better if more men could embrace that. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
In
100%.
relationships and at work.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I know you also go around and share your story, and I imagine you touch on this point. What is that feedback like? Have people come up to you after, or other men, or women, or just in general? What's kind of been your feedback from just being open out there and sharing your story?
Yeah, I do. I travel around and I teach sort of emotional intelligence and empathy and leadership. And um, yeah, obviously, most women are like, yes, thank you, more of that, please, right?
Yeah.
And and there are a lot of men that push back against it, but more and more, I think the world is shifting,
Hmm.
and more men are sort of embracing that. I think it's important to sort of model like kindness does not equal weakness.
Hmm.
That a lot of men are just afraid of. It comes from, right, relationships with our dads and old school kind of parenting styles where you know men aren't supposed to cry or be weak or vulnerable or whatever. And I think, well, I hope that that's changing. It feels like it's changing a little bit, and it's a little bit more okay, um, to be able to be weak, and or not weak, but show vulnerability. That's one of the reasons that I do these Ironman triathlons. It, and then I teach things like kindness and empathy and leadership, right? Like kindness does not equal weakness. I'm
Hmm.
just as strong or whatever, tough, as anybody else. And I can also cry in front of you if I have to, or talk about our feelings and things like that. I think it's just the world is would be better if we just did more of that. I mean, I don't know. It's hard because
Yeah.
it it's hard because we all grew up with parents, especially men of my age, right? We grew up with parents that were not necessarily open to that kind of stuff. Um, but we can end those cycles. We can end, just like we can end, generational trauma. We can end generational trauma like at work in our leadership roles. And just because the fire chief I grew up with didn't, you know, do anything like that, he would yell at us and tell us to go clean the floors or whatever if we even talked about anything. And they said, suck it up. If you're either meant for this job or you're not.
Hmm.
You can either handle this terrible stuff or you can't. And I'm like, well, that's not really what current mental health models will tell us. So we can change. We can change. We can end those generational traumas, and we can all get better. I hope that's my goal, at least.
And you mentioned your son, he's 18, he's a young man and about to go off into the world, or maybe he's going to, still be there. But as you've kind of gone on this journey, I'm sure you've had those conversations with him. Has he been open to kind of receiving that? What's been sort of his take on seeing, dad, how dad was and where dad's at now, and kind of where he's going, and kind of shaping him to become his own man?
Yeah, he's into it. He's got a lot of pressure to be the cool guy. That's sort of the nature of the nature of it. But I see him starting to take on some of these things and lead his little friend group. Uh, I see it happening, and I appreciate that. I really am proud of him for that. All we can do is sort of draw back the bow and aim it as best as we can before we release. And he's sort of the arrow has left, right? And I just hope
Hmm.
that I gave him some tools uh, that he can use as he flies through the universe, doing his thing. Um, I hope he knows he can always come back and talk to me. And I mean, we've built a really trusting and loving relationship. And man, I hope it's different than my relationship with my dad was, because it wasn't that way at all. So I really tried to change the way that I parented him from the way I was parented. So maybe, I hope I'm right. You never know, right?
Yeah,
You never
I'm
know. He's his own human being, but he's a really kind and empathetic young man. And that's all I care about, right? That he's a good person. I don't care
mhm.
what he does for work or if he makes any money or not. I mean, I just want him to be a good dude, and he is. So I'm cool. I'm glad with that.
And on the flip side, you have a daughter, so she's little sister. You have the boy and the girl. So what's that relationship been like with you, with your daughter?
Yeah, she and I are super close, and we are navigating him leaving our little nest together, right? And so it's going to be kind of weird, but I mean, she and I are connected on a whole bunch of levels, sort of that daddy-daughter relationship, and we can almost read each other's thoughts a lot of the times. She is, obviously a great human being. She's really driven to succeed, and really wants to go to college, and she's an athlete, and it'll be fun. It'll be different. This next year will be really different. It'll be just her and I, kind of facing the world.
Wow.
Maybe without him, we don't really know what he's doing yet, but he is gonna enter the world, and we just wish him the best. But
Yeah.
yeah, she and I, and we're both real proud of each other for the journeys, our mental health journeys that we're both on, sort of together and separately on our own. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, speaking from experience as a girl dad, dads and daughters have a very special bond. So I can certainly, relate to that. You had touched on like tools and routines. I know you're in Valdez, which you were mentioning a little bit earlier about kind of living in a small town and going through this life or this sobriety journey. And for anyone listening or watching, have there been any tools, routines, or community resources that for you have particularly been helpful, that you could share?
Yeah, most of my journey was done alone and with the help of, some mental health professionals. But man, I think I can't stress enough that sort of practice, that intentional, deliberate gratitude practice, and just every day finding something that you are grateful for. It can really change your whole life, right? Like, we see the world, we filter the world constantly, right? And if we're dwelling on negative things, our brain sort of works like the social media algorithms do. The more you click on, the more you're going to see. The more you hover on, the more you're going to see when it comes to social media, right? Like, and our brains work the same way. And I feel really strongly about this. If you're constantly dwelling on negativity or the bad things that are going on in your life, you're going to see more of that. And as I shifted my focus to gratitude and kindness and emotional intelligence, and I really deliberately, like, physically write things down that I'm grateful for every single day, at least three. And by doing that practice, just like meditation or yoga is a practice, you have to do it all the time. But gratitude is a practice. If you do it constantly and continually, you will literally see more beauty in the world. Like, the flowers smell better,
Mm-hmm.
the river sounds like music when it flows past me, and it sounds weird, I know, but I see more positive things in the world just by practicing those things like gratitude and self-awareness. And it works. That's the best tool I could find. I mean, there's obviously a lot of mental health tools for depression and anxiety, and men, go to therapy. It works. It helps. I'll say that a number of times, right? You can read all the books you want, but sometimes you just need somebody to talk to that understands, that will listen, and will help you with tools. But for as far as self work that you can do, yeah, change the algorithm, change the way you see things, and be proud of yourself when you can, right? I mean, what you see in the mirror changes when you practice gratitude, right? Like, it's just so weird how different it is. Like, the best way, they say this in fitness, right? The best way you get
Mm-hmm.
to get the body you want is to love the body you have. right? And it's the same way with your mind, right? The best way to be emotionally and mentally healthy is to start to love yourself. I read this book by the Dalai Lama called The Art of Happiness, and he talks about finding the true essence of happiness is in compassion, right? In the service of others and in easing the suffering in other people. And then there's this whole chapter on self-compassion and loving yourself, learning to love yourself, learning to forgive yourself, learning to appreciate who you are and ease your own suffering. And that was a tough one for me. It took a number of years before I could really wrap my head around that, but I feel like that's the key to finding that sort of internal joy, I guess you'd call it. Yeah. And you got to find joy if you want to let go of things like alcohol, right? You
Yeah.
got to find that joy within yourself.
No, I love that.
So that's my.
We talk to a lot of moms, and they talk about the mom guilt. So is there dad guilt? Did you experience that? What was that journey like for you?
I wish I could take back all those days that I missed when I was numb from alcohol. I wish I could get them back, but it is what it is. I'm trying not to beat myself up about it. I'm trying to just move forward with grace and with dignity, and know that I'm on a different journey now than I was then, and I'm really glad that I am.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And you were mentioning about following your passions and kind of finding imagine you're kind of rediscovering yourself again on this next chapter. You were mentioning like triathlons. Is fitness and health and kind of getting involved in that something that is an outlet for you? And what all are you involved in? And when's your next upcoming race? Or have you just finished one?
Oh man, okay. Yeah, cool. I do. Yeah, I do these triathlons. And a big thing about I do them because they're difficult. I do them because they're like extremely difficult. I mean, and I'm doing like 16-hour long endurance events that are just really hard physically and mentally to get through. And I do it because to prove to myself that I can do difficult things, right? And that's sort of like the sobriety journey or the mental health journey or any of them. And it helps me model that behavior for others. But really, for me, I do them to remind myself. And I have a little saying: it's difficult is not bad. Difficult is not impossible, right? Difficult is just difficult, and we can do difficult things. And by doing them and reminding myself, it's almost again like a practice. Like you forget, and I forget. Like I'll do an Ironman triathlon, 14, 15 hours long, one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then a couple weeks later, I'm like, no, I can't write this report at work, or, oh, I got this thing going on that's hard. And then I'm like, wait, you can do anything, right? I can literally do anything. I just forget sometimes. And I think we all do. And certainly sobriety, right? It's hard. I mean, it's a lot easier now, but at first it was really hard. And I just had to do those to prove to myself that I can do different things. Sort of the second part of your question was, what other things do I do? I'm on the board of a nonprofit here in town where it's sort of a mental health, physical health, community connectedness is our mission statement. And I mean, just little things like we host sober, safe dance parties, right, and events in town, and we really try to provide community connectedness events where people can get together and not have it just be centered around these unhealthy activities. So yeah, that's what I do. Training for Ironman triathlons takes I sign up for them like a year in advance, and it takes months and months to build my endurance up to that level. And that's what I do. It just really keeps me focused. Some may say that I traded one addiction for the other, but I feel like my relationship with exercise is not an unhealthy one. I do know some people that have done that and are running away from things. I try to run towards things, and that's how I frame it in my mind so that I don't get obsessive about it. Yeah. My next event is in a couple weeks. I'm going to San Francisco to do this Escape from Alcatraz race where they take
Wow.
you out on a ferry into San Francisco Bay in the dark, and you got to jump off and swim to shore, and then ride your bike and then run down the beach. It's super hard, but yeah, that's I got those and some Ironman events coming up this summer. Yeah,
Wow. Oh my,
yeah,
Alcatraz
that's
in
what
the dark and wow, okay.
yeah, that's what I like to do. It's weird, but
uh,
it helps me.
no, it's great. You had touched on some of like the sober lifestyle and events there. Is there a way that folks, if they're watching or they're there, they can connect with you all? Is there like a social media page, or is that just something where they need to reach out and can find out more information? Where would they go?
Oh, here in Valdez, we post those kind of things on a Facebook group
Okay.
or on the Swan. It's called Swan, the Sound Wellness Alliance Network, and it's a nonprofit that we host events. If you go to our website, you can just type it into Google and find it. That's one way. Otherwise, just follow me on Instagram. I have AK Wisner is my thing on Instagram. Otherwise, I have a long run leadership page on Instagram. Sound Wellness Alliance has a page on Instagram and Facebook, and we just try to put good vibe content out there wherever we can. That's what I do when I'm not at work, doing this job.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your job, fire chief, how long have you been in that position, and what kind of led you to get into that field?
Yeah, I've been a fire chief since 2012. Worked my way up as I was an officer and a firefighter, and I've been an EMT since I was about 18 years old, helping people with medical stuff. Worked on a bunch of mountain rescue teams, and then
Hmm.
became a full-time firefighter back in 2004. Um, Career firefighter, and just worked my way up from there. It's a great job. I do it because I like helping people, and we have a saying in our line of work, I'm not here for me, I'm here for we, and we
Hmm.
are here for them, right? We do this to serve our fellow humans and in their times of need, right? Whether it's fire or emergency medical or rescue. And yeah, I love it. I've been in this line of work for a long time, and I just can't really imagine doing anything else. Hoping to retire in a handful of years. I'm getting older and pass it off to somebody else, and then I can focus. I really want to finish my PhD,
Mm.
finish writing my book. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to do, so I'm hoping to retire and move on with that kind of stuff. Yeah,
That is right. Your book. Tell me about that. You're currently in the stages of writing it right now. What's it
I
about?
am. Yeah, I am. It's about empathy and emotional intelligence and leadership. It's the fire service, especially emergency service organizations. Like we talked about before, there's been a lot of bullying, toxic leadership, sexual harassment, things like that. And I think a lot of those old ways of leadership have changed, and the fire service hasn't really caught up to them. It's starting to, but I have a book. I have a book that I'm writing about different, you know, creating connectedness, creating collaboration, empathy. You know, firefighting to most people sounds like a dangerous line of work, and but I read a statistic one time that said that since we started counting, more emergency responders die by suicide than in the line of duty fighting fires or whatever. So we have to change that, right? And I
Yeah.
think that starts not just with providing mental health resources for people. That's sort of a reactive approach to it, but we can start by building a culture that is safer for people to be emotionally present, and that starts with us, with the leaders, right? We have to
Hmm.
own that, some of that, right? We can build systems, and we can change the way that we lead our people to try to fix some of that. It's just something I have to do. I can't live with that statistic.
And I imagine your journey for you, or going on these calls, or even, in your leadership position now, has helped you maybe connect with out in the public, or going on a tough call, or maybe even coming across a call of someone who's, on their own sobriety journey? Has what you've gone through helped you, connect a little bit better when you have to be out in the field responding to some of that hard stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm way more present, right? Just as a person, right? Because I'm not, um, yeah, because I'm clear-headed all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm way more present, but I'm also able to encourage, right? Especially with the people that work for me, the men and women who I lead, right? I mean, how can I say that maybe don't drink yourself out of that call, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, if you see a bad call or you deal with some horrible things, like that's the first thing people do. Let's go drink and forget about it. And how can I encourage people to not do that, or to find healthier ways of coping if I'm doing it, right? So it just sort of is self-sustaining in that regard. I'm way more present for them. I'm way more present for the people that I serve. Again, I'm not here for me. I'm here for we,
Mm-hmm.
and we're here for them, right? We're here to serve the public, and they expect us to be resilient and strong and healthy when we show up. And I guess I just try to model that behavior. I try to teach people healthy habits, but I mostly just try to model that behavior for them. Look, I can do it, and I'm still fun and cool and strong and
Yeah.
whatever. So.
No, it's definitely admirable. What do you hope that your children learn from your story, and what legacy are you working to leave for them?
I want them to continue practicing gratitude in their life, because I think it's just a game changer. I want them to know that it's okay to not be okay sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I want them to um, embrace things like vulnerability and empathy, so that they can go out into the world and help other people, right? And be healthy themselves, right? I really want the best for them. They're both really, really kind and helpful people, and I think it's I mean, that's how we fix the future, right? That's how our society changes, um is by teaching these our kids these kind of tools, and getting them to then spread that message, or that vibe throughout their life as they go, right? I think I read a meme the other day that said, what was it, the most ha- teaching your kids to be kind and empathetic is a form of like social rebellion, right? Like, well, let's fix the future
Yeah.
by by making our kids just be better than we were, right? I mean, they're both already so far ahead of me. I mean, the Gen Z is great. Like they're already leaps and bounds ahead of us when it comes to thinking about this stuff. I mean, it's almost like I talk about things and that I had to really work hard on, and they're already practicing that kind of stuff. So I feel good about the future. Honestly, I do.
Were you dealing with your sobriety journey through COVID? I'm curious to know what that was, what that time was like for you.
um, yeah, COVID was wild. I, I you know, I tend to some introversion sometimes, and so COVID, the lockdown, right? I worked from home, and the kids were at home, and we all just kind of huddled in, and um, it was actually, I mean, it was horrible what happened in the world, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to experience that again. And I lost my father during COVID, and due to complications, and I couldn't go see him, and it was terrible. And don't get me wrong, and don't take this the wrong way, but I actually enjoyed the sort of like me and my kids and my
Mm-hmm.
family, we just sort of huddled in, and we were able to really share a lot of time together,
Yeah.
and I tried to see some positives from it in that regard. So we spent a lot of time together, and yeah, that's where it started, right? That's where um, I was able to, it was great. It was kind of better for me at that time because I didn't
Hmm.
have, nobody was going out anyway, and I didn't have a lot of influence. Um, and so it was a good way to sort of kickstart. And I think a lot of people, when they start their sobriety journey, they have to sort of dig in and
Yeah.
focus on themselves for a while and change their groups of friends. And I was sort of like forced. It was sort of that forced repose, right, where we all had to sit and think, and we had to look in the mirror a lot, and we had to like who we saw, and I
Yeah.
didn't like what I saw, and so it was easy to change that at that point. Yeah. I mean, it was terrible, but I lost my dad and all that, but in a way it helped me on my journey. Yeah, it
Well,
did.
I'm sorry to hear that about your dad. I know he's certainly proud of you and your journey. And as we kind of wrap up, what are you most proud of about yourself through all of this?
You know, huh, I'm proud of the way that I'm proud of the way that I was able to change. I really am. I'm proud of who I am as a leader. I'm proud of who I am as a parent, and I'm proud of who I am as a man. I am a way better human being than I was 5 years ago, and and it has opened up so many doors for me as far as interpersonal romantic relationships. I met the woman of my dreams. I am just way better person to be around. I like myself better. I guess
Hmm.
that's it, right? If you want to find the love of your life, you got to be the person that's worthy of that love. And I finally feel worthy of that love, and I finally feel worthy of what of where I am in the universe. I it was hard. It's hard to say, but that's that's what I'm most proud of.
I love that. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you. I'm very proud of you, and thank you so much for just being open and being vulnerable and sharing your story. As I said, I love talking to the guys and kind of getting raw and getting real, because I know anyone listening back or watching it will certainly help them. Vulnerability is the cool thing now in 2025. But I like to let my guests have the last word. Any advice or anything that I didn't ask that you would like to mention or add? This is your time to just share, or anyone listening maybe that is on the struggle bus right now or trying to get into where you're at, words of advice, anything that you feel on your heart that you want to share. I'll let you have the floor.
Sure, you can do it, right? You can do difficult things, and you're worth it. You are worth it. Your kids are worth it. Your family is worth it. But most importantly, you are worthy of being healthy and resilient, right? I see you, and I love you, right? Like, you can do this. Just take it one day at a time and do it. Yep.
But, well, Sean, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been really an honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to
Thank you.
thank everyone for listening to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. And don't forget to like and subscribe.